Euphoria Season 2, Episode 5. I think that this was my favorite episode of the series so far.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think this is sort of what I've been clamoring for this whole season is I want to focus more on Rue. I want to stay tight on her addiction and her story and all of that. And let all of the other stuff just sort of go to the wayside for a minute. And we finally get that in this episode.
Yeah, I think that is very clearly the strongest storyline. It's the storyline that they know how to write the best. Goddamn, man, just give Zendaya the Emmy right now.
Yeah.
Truly, it was similar to when we were watching Succession. And I'm like, okay, time just to give Jeremy Strong the Emmy now.
Yeah.
This was one of the, just in general, an episode of TV that was one of the most uncomfortable for me to watch in my entire life.
Yeah.
Of anything I've ever seen. Those first 10, 15 minutes of the show, just heartbreaking and such incredible performances by literally everyone on the screen. The writing spot on, just man. I said 1 week ago on this podcast that Zendaya was one of the greatest comedic actresses of all time, of our generation. I want to amend it just to say, just in general, one of the greatest actors, actresses of our generation. Truly incredible stuff going on there.
Really good. And so what happens in this episode, it's basically just Rue full on breaking down, full relapse, full destroying her family and everyone that's in her life, and then a big chase for her throughout most of the episode. And a little a little moment with Cassie that I cannot wait to talk about. So I agree. I think that when I was like, oh, here, yeah, Zendaya, you can have the Emmy. That moment for me was when she's just slammed through the door and she berates her mom and her sister, and then she goes into her room and she screams you wish I was different, so do I. You fucking hate me, so do I. And that sincerely brought some tears to my eyes. I started to well up a little bit because before that, I'm
getting chills right now just thinking about it.
It's really, really powerful stuff. I think when she talks to Jules as well, every grating thing that she says, all of it feels very authentic. And what I love too is she'll go on this insane attack. And she'll attack her mom and she'll attack her sister. And then she'll break down and start crying and be like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then her mom has been through this so many times that she just doesn't say anything and just waits for the attack to come again. And then it does. And you can see the tactics that Rue has to go through in order to get what she wants, which is drugs. And it's just devastating. I mean, addiction is it's so painful and it hurts so many people.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of discourse this season just on the internet about how this show quote unquote glamorizes drug use and addiction. And for anyone saying that, watch this episode, because this is fucking hell.
Yeah.
Here. The pain that everyone in her circle goes through because of her addiction in this episode is immense. It really shows there's a darkness to this episode.
And, the show's called Euphoria, and the show is fantastical and it does glamorize stuff at times. But when it chooses to do that versus when it chooses to do what they do in this episode, which is make everything so raw, you can clearly see, for example, whenever Rue is high, everything becomes this enchanted magical forest with crazy things going on. And that's just the filmmaking to heighten that feeling that she has of pure euphoria. And then in this episode, when she is completely crashing down to earth and she's ruining her life and everyone else's life, it's just handheld. It is tight close-ups. It is claustrophobic. There is not a lot of glamour to this episode for sure. So I definitely agree. I think the strongest, it's going to be weird to say my favorite episode of the series or my favorite scene from this episode, because it's all hell.
Right.
And it's all just terrible and sad. But I think the stuff that just really hit me the most was everything pre Euphoria title card coming up. Everything when they're in the house and Rue is breaking down the door. It's so visceral and violent and scary. And I don't know what she's capable of in that moment, which is the scariest thing, because you have this high school girl who, is this meek, thin young woman who you don't expect to have this sort of physical presence or violence
to
within her.
break down the door with the back of her head.
Yeah.
Like she's just slamming it with her head.
She just slams it in. And so all of that, and then getting into the car and then running out of the car, all of that was just so raw and palpable. And again, you could see the fluctuations of Rue going from attack to apology to like denial, and just running through all of that. I think that section is probably my favorite.
Yeah, I want to give mad props too to I'm blanking on the actress's name, but the mom, Leslie is the character's name, does a terrific job here. There's like a moment where like Rue goes for her sister, and the mom says like, "Don't you touch her," and then just like slaps the shit out of her, which was like just a tremendously raw moment there.
Yeah.
Insane. Because there's also like, so in this whole section here, there's this like there's kind of two things going on. Let me back up and try to figure out how to phrase this. But like her mom and sister think that like she's freaking out of the suitcase purely because she's a drug addict and like needs her drugs because she's addicted to it. But then also like part of the reason Rue's freaking out is because that's $10,000 worth of drugs that she has to get money for so that she doesn't get kidnapped and murdered or whatever is going to happen if she doesn't come up with that money.
Right.
So like there's just like this dichotomy of like what characters know and what we, the audience, know that's going on that I found fascinating in this first section here.
Totally. And she's unwilling at first to say it because she doesn't want to make the situation even worse. We've been building towards this all season. Like we knew that she was not going to be able to pay this off. We knew that something bad was going to happen. She was either going to do all the drugs or someone was going to find out or whatever it was. And so she just starts attacking her mom and her sister, and both of those two performances outside of Zendaya, like both of those are just amazing. The absolute terror that Gia has in this episode, where she just is in a fetal position on the bed and just tears just rolling down her eyes, and like it's an impossible situation for her to be in. And I think of all the characters on Euphoria, she's the one that I probably feel the worst for, because she loves her sister so much, and she sees like the best moments of her sister, and she sees the worst moments of her sister, like she does in this episode, and it's heartbreaking. So both of them were just fantastic. I think what another moment that killed me was when it's revealed that Jules and Elliot were there the whole time. Again, just what the audience knows versus what we don't know, because we could have opened the episode with them, you know, basically confessing to Rue's mom and being like, okay, well, let's talk to her about it. But instead, they just jump straight into Rue jumping on Gia, being like, where are the drugs? So when we reveal that Elliot and Jules were there the whole time, it's like, oh no, because now Jules and Elliot are going to see what a monster Rue is with her drug addiction. And then she just gets so mean to Jules.
And in that like reveal too, like it gives us, the audience, like a similar reaction to like what Rue has, because she doesn't know that they're there either. We don't know, so like we can like feel like the shame and embarrassment like for her in that situation. And then like she just like goes to 100 with Jules there and just like says some nasty things to her. You're
the biggest regret of my life.
Which is very similar to Cal talking to...
Yeah,
there's a lot of parallels between, you know, what happens with Rue and her people in this episode to other characters in the story here.
Yeah, it's all about the repression of emotions, and whether that's repression of like your sexuality or repression of these internalized grief, or this internalized grief that you have, whatever it is, it's all about how these people cope with their repression. And in this moment, it's just, she also like punch pushes Elliot in the head at one point.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
You know what? He like a lot of people hate him online.
What?
Yeah, they just think like he's a super toxic person. But like he has known these people for like a month or so at this point, and is having to deal with all this shit here already, and that's why like he says at one point, he's like, I liked her before, like better before.
Yeah.
Which like in a way is like it is kind of like a shitty thing to say about someone, but also like his relationship with them isn't like super deep and established. I just found it interesting.
Again, this is where they focused in, which is what I wanted, because they could have given us more time in this episode with Jules and Elliot after the whole intervention there. And we could have heard them talk about like how horrible this whole interaction was, but we're not doing that. It's focused on Rue today, and that's all we're going to focus on. Next week we'll deal with Cassie and Maddie, and we'll deal with Elliot and Jules, you know. Today, Rue's got to go run around. And so that's what we get. She jumps out the car. Real quick, I just want to say this episode again just highlights some of the sort of outside the box or creative or just generally thoughtful filmmaking that Sam Levinson deploys. When she's in the car, when the shots are inside the vehicle, it's you just hear the characters talking. When the shots are outside the vehicle, you hear all of the cars and the wind noise and everything, and it's just one of those things that isn't often actually thought of in sound design. Just small little details like that, and it just adds to the claustrophobia and to the anxiety and to the panic when we're jumping back and forth between different soundscapes as well as different like visual pieces as well. And I love the glare on the windows and everything. It feels like we're heating up, we're building up. And when she realizes we're not going to the ER, we're going to rehab, she just does not want anything to do with that. She jumps out the car and then she's off to the races. Let's talk about the moment that made me laugh harder than anything, which is when Cassie gets involved, when Rue shows up.
Yeah.
Rue shows up at Cassie and Lexi's house, and she's like, hey, can I use your bathroom? And then their mom is very funny in that scene as well. She comes back down, and then everyone's there, and her mom is there, and we're getting a full-on intervention in Rue. It feels like at that point I was a little bit nervous because I'm like, oh no, it's all going to work out. Like she's all the power of her friends. They're all going to come together and they're going to get her into rehab. And then she's like, I can't stay sober forever. And Cassie's like, you don't have to. You can just take it day by day.
Which is hilarious. And it's also like genuinely good advice.
It's really sweet.
It's so sweet. And like the look on her face too. Like great like nonverbal acting from Sydney Sweeney there. Like she's so proud of herself for like this this great piece of advice, and she's like looking around for approval. Yeah, she looks around, she's so confident, she's like smiling and nodding. She's like, I did it. I fixed drugs. And then immediately Rue's just like, how long you been fucking Nate Jacobs? And then it turns and then the intervention is over because Maddie is like not thrilled about that. And then again, just a good. This is how this whole subplot should have been played out. The Maddie, Cassie, Nate thing. Like what we get of it in this episode is what I feel like we should have been getting this whole time. Like it should have just been a secondary thing, right? Instead of like a huge focus of the first 4 episodes. Because like I feel like in this scene here, like it highlights the disparity in the stakes of these two situations here. Yeah. Like one is like this very stupid like young love triangle, and the other is someone who is like deadly addicted to drugs and destroying everything around her. Right. And we really see that contrast here. And they smartly sort of play it for comedy too. Like it's all serious for everybody, but like it's hilarious that they're trying to do an intervention and these two have to deal with their own shit. Which I want to say too, just about the show in general, like they have had some in like insanely funny scenes in this season, without turning the show into a comedy or anything even like remotely resembling a comedy, and I really appreciate that. For sure. The only few exceptions we've talked about in the past were just like dream sequency stuff. Right. Some of that stuff feels big mouthish, but other than that, yeah, they can very deftly jump back and forth between stuff that's really funny and stuff that's very, very serious. And so this scene gives us a little bit of levity, and which is appreciated because before she jumps out of the car and all of that stuff is so raw and so intense that we need a little sprinkling of something. And so throughout the rest of the episode, they sort of play a little bit with tone where we get this Cassie scene, which is really funny. We also get when she's like robbing the house later, they put on like this sort of like classic like casino robbing music, you know. It's something that you'd hear in like Ocean's 11 or something, and like it seems fun, and then the music cuts out abruptly and then they show up, but still that's kind of played for comedy as well a little bit because the dude checks under the bed and
sees her and he's like, oh fuck, and then she runs out the house, and some of the cop chase at the end also is played a little bit for comedy. So I think that they very smartly, they knew how intense the subject matter was for this episode, and they weave in and out of super dramatic and super funny.
You got to give us a break at some point.
Yeah, it can't just all be trauma.
No, I can't just see people's like whole lives being ruined before my eyes for, an hour and 10 minutes. That's a lot.
Right. And I think it smartly keeps us on Rue's side, because like we love Rue so much, but she does go to a house and steal a bunch of shit and money. And that is a pretty deplorable thing. We understand why she's doing it, because she's like in the throes of this horrific withdrawal. But if not for like the charm of Zendaya and the charm of the filmmaking in that sequence, it would just be like, if there was no music, if they just played it straight, shaky cam, the way that they had played a lot of the episode, it would feel a little bit more gross.
Yeah, it completely would shift up the tone of that sequence there into something that's like as opposed to like a comedic break in it is like, oh shit, she's doing this now too.
Yeah, and so we still understand that like what she's doing is bad, but it doesn't have to hit us in the face with it, so that's pretty incredible. Let's talk about the chase, which is dual parts Ferris Bueller's Day Off and dual parts Good Time by the Safdie brothers.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. I think the shot that like really killed me was when she jumps over the fence. It's like really tight, and then she crashes through the glass table, and then we zoom out, and then there's like the kids in the pool, and they're like, one dude just gestures like, what the hell? That one really was funny. It gets very intense though. There's a car crash as a result of Rue running through the street. Again, definitely fluctuating between comedy and drama. But what did you think of the chase sequence?
Oh man, great chase sequence here. I also love too when like she goes over the fence and like falls into the cactus.
Yeah.
And then like we know that the cops are also going to fall into the cactus. And after that, I think that's great. She jumped on a barbecue that was on fire.
That was so cool.
Yeah. Really excellent chase sequence. I feel like one of the better chase sequences I've seen in film or television in a while.
And I think, if we could just pull back, if I could go galaxy brain for a second.
Galaxy.
This is stuff that is hard for a feature film where you have 2 weeks to shoot this whole sequence. They don't have that much time on Euphoria. I don't know how they break it down. I'm sure that they get more time than a regular television show because of how difficult the show is to make, but they're on a real tight schedule. And the amount of locations that they used in this episode, just for small moments, just for one shot of Rue's feet running in the alleyway, they use at least like 10 different alleyway shots, and they use several different like intersection areas, different houses. They go all over the place. And so to coordinate that is one thing that's incredibly difficult, but then also just like to be able to do it all in such a tightly packed and condensed amount of time is even more impressive. It's just a testament to Sam Levinson's incredible ability to make film.
Right. And not just doing it, but doing it well too.
Right. Yeah.
To be able to have all these moving parts that, like you said, would be difficult for a feature film to have happen, and then to like have them all be executed so well too is truly impressive.
I mentioned, Ferris Bueller's Day Off meets Good Time. Good Time is one of my favorite movies. It's by the Safdie brothers. They did Uncut Gems as well with Adam Sandler and
Kevin Garnett.
But those movies are by the Safdie brothers are shot on film, and they're very grainy, and it's very raw and claustrophobic and tight in the same way that this episode was. So I was appreciating more than ever this season the choice to shoot on film, because when the show is at its most raw, that's when I think I notice the film grain the most, and I think it definitely enhances the quality of the overall image. And so there's shots when she's just running and the light is beaming and you can see little particles of dust and just stuff that you don't totally get out of digital. So again, just shout out to Sam Levinson for just making smart choices.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Chase sequence is awesome. Talked about Cassie. That was amazing. Talked about the beginning. Let's talk about when she goes to the drug dealer's house.
Oh,
I I love this drug dealer. She's great.
Incredible.
She's really funny performance, really interesting. I feel like I just recognize that. I recognize that more than like Tuco from Breaking Bad, you know, like somebody that's just like a bad dude.
More than like Mouse.
More than Mouse, yeah. Like, I feel like I know a few suburban moms that are like that.
Who, like, theoretically could, like, be this totally innocent looking person who's like a drug dealer.
Right, and she's just very normal.
Drug lord, my apologies.
Yeah, drug lord. That's lord to you. The story that she tells about how she was an athlete and then she got addicted to opioids because of her surgeries and stuff. Like, I just feel like I know, and the way that their house is kind of like a little gross also, it just reminds me of some places that I've seen. And I like that contrast. I like that we do have a mouse in the show, and I like that the drug lord... Not anymore. And I like that the drug lord is this person, because it's a different thing than what I've seen from other drug shows. And it's a different type of intimidating and a different type of scary too. Because like when we linger on that shot of the morphine, I'm starting to get really nervous.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, is she going to kill Rue? Is Rue dead now? Like, is that what's going to happen? Is she going to die in this bathtub? And ultimately she's pretty nice about the whole thing, but still, you know that like Rue has to find the money. Otherwise she will be dead.
Or else she is going to be like a sex slave for this lady.
Yeah,
like,
that was kind of upsetting, wasn't it? When she was like, you know, that's the good thing about being a woman. If you don't have money, you always have something that men will want.
Right.
That was definitely like a thinly veiled threat.
But like because of like the tone of this lady,
yeah,
it like doesn't like necessarily like immediately come off as like, oh, this is like a legit threat that she's making to Rue. It's like, oh yeah, that's true. Wait a second.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Which I also think like just this character in general, like we talked about earlier, is like does a really nice job of like balancing comedy without getting like too absurd and making it a full-blown comedy. Like when she's thinking about like, she's like, no, I've never been angry before. Wait, have I? No, I don't think so.
Is that true? Yeah, no, that reminds me, because we're doing the Noah Baumbach series right now, and I was just listening to an interview with Noah Baumbach. He was talking about how when he was doing Squid and the Whale, Jeff Daniels was working through a scene, and then they filmed it, and then Noah Baumbach asked him like, how was it? And Jeff Daniels said, it feels funny. Not it was funny, but it feels funny because the scene itself is played seriously, but it comes off as funny. And I feel like that's her character as well.
Yeah.
It's like she doesn't play it funny. She plays it straight, but it feels funny. It comes off as funny because of how odd she is as a character, but also the contrast of like her personality with her occupation, which is something that you talked about before with Fez, like what he is versus what he does. All of that was dual parts tense, funny, and kind of this weird fever dream, especially when she wakes up and she is going through the house. Well,
she does have a literal dream like in the middle of it.
Yeah, that's true. She has a great dream. I forgot about that. She when she goes into the bathtub, she's imagines herself as a little kid getting bath time, and then her father's she's giving like a little eulogy at her father's ceremony, and imagining or remembering her sister being born, all of that stuff. Really, really beautiful. Another just funny, sweet, silly, endearing moment is when she kisses the glass.
Yeah.
And then her dad's
no, don't kiss that.
Yeah, this is a hospital. Don't kiss the glass. And I thought that her speech was beautiful.
Right. And I think there's too, like, I believe they mentioned this, like, I think it might have been in her special episode, but like, I feel like it's been highlighted more these like last two, is that like the reason she's a drug addict like isn't because her dad died. Like that's not what made her a drug addict. Like she was always going to end up like this when some sort of trauma came across her. She took those pills for the first time, but like that was the catalyst that like ignited the whole thing. And like she's just been trying to find like this like sense of peace through that. And she even talks about like, I think at that eulogy that like how her dad said like anytime like she closes her eyes, like he'll be there.
Yeah.
So I feel like that gave us like a lot of insight into like why like she like chooses drugs to escape from all this.
It's one of those things also that like as a kid you could easily misinterpret, and I can understand why she would end up, she feels very suicidal, and like the idea of closing your eyes and dreaming, go all the way back to Shakespeare and before to hear metaphors about dreams and death, and they play it very soberly. That's what's funny is they do a lot of dream sequences in the show, and they're very theatrical and big. This dream sequence is very sober, and it's very, very real. It's very much remembered authentically as opposed to fantastically. And again, that was another moment that I was just like, wow, this is hitting me, because I watched it right when I woke up this morning.
Oh yeah.
I got home from work at like 1:30 a.m., went to bed, woke up, and then as soon as I woke up, I was like, I got to watch Euphoria. And I just turned it on, and I could not believe, almost half asleep, how much this was hitting me.
Yeah.
And just when she starts crying, she's like, thank you, that's all. And then she walks off. It's just powerful. It's really good stuff. And this is what Sam Levinson is meant to be doing, is this version of the show. And I feel like they strayed away from some of this early in the season, but where we're ending up is really positive. It makes me really excited for the rest of the show.
Yeah, I'm fully back in now.
Yeah.
After like these last 2 episodes here, and this one especially, just like it makes me like upset in a way that they like wasted so much time earlier in the season, like with some of these other storylines. Just because, like, to me, like, this is the most interesting one. Like, this is the heart of the soul, or heart of the show, the soul of the show. Like, this is what Euphoria is. Like, this storyline here, this character. And I think that's because, like, and Sam Levinson has talked about this, like, this is what he knows. Like, this experience is, like, similar to his own. So it doesn't surprise me that like this is the best written out of all the storylines.
Now let me ask you a question, because I agree. I feel like the first 3 episodes we're kind of pissing around here on the show, and
just like Cal, just
pissing around in the foyer. I was thinking about like how would I rather have spent my time in those first 3 episodes, and still get to where we want to be. You can still have the love triangle with Cassie, Maddie, and Nate, but I feel like just give it a little bit less time. What would you like to have seen in place of that? Because one thing that I was thinking was just more time with Elliot. Just giving that storyline a little bit more play.
Yeah, I think just in general, like I want to see more of this Elliot, Rue, Jules dynamic. Like we got introduced to it like last episode, but I think it would have been like, yeah, just give me more time with those characters. Like let's build on like those relationships that they got going on there, because I feel like the actual relationship between those 3 has been like pushed to the side this season, to give more time to like the Cassie and Nate relationship, which I just like, I haven't found that interesting this year.
Yeah. What we got out of the Elliot, Rue, and Jules stuff is great. So, they did very well with that. But I agree. I think maybe we should have just spent more time with them. Just let them go do fun high school stuff.
Right.
And then when Rue hits rock bottom, it maybe feels even worse a little bit,
like show them having like good, like when they were doing like the truth and dare stuff, and then like, he's getting chased by like the people in the school. Like just give us like them more like being teenagers and stuff. Right.
Yeah. So I think that might have done the show a little bit of service, but again, like we said, fully back in now. This is Euphoria season 2 episode 5, and we're looking forward to Euphoria season 2 episode 6, which will be next week, so stay tuned for that. Thank you as always for listening, and stay tuned for more Noah Baumbach stuff. Stay tuned for some 49ers season recap stuff. Stay tuned for NBA in the future. We do so much stuff here.
And a lot of stuff.
We're gonna start doing some live film stuff. We got so much stuff going on. Just hang out with us and check us out. Have a nice week. Thank you.